Hey, you. You're finally awake. And now you're in a game, probably prepared for adventure, freedom, danger, and a very devastating side quest that will make you so for hours. And then the game says, quickly, we have no time. Run. Beautiful. Some urgency, drama, let's run. And then the NPC starts moving at the speed of a man carrying a full bowl of soup on a very slippery floor, and you didn't even order that soup. Fuck that soup. So, you rightfully think, are we actually in danger? Or am I still stuck in the era of walking simulators but with no beautiful story attached? You know, one designed solely to test my patience. Well, I failed that test. But then you remember that this is a pretty typical situation for many games. Because games have trends. Some are useful, innovative, fun, and obscene in a very best way. And some just exist because one popular game had them, and now all developers think that the success of that game depends entirely on the ability to hide behind the obstacles. So they want to add that too, in a game with farming and fairies. And no fights. Well, I hope that Onion won't see me. And after a while you start seeing those trendy mechanics everywhere, and hating them more than that soup. So today, my precious space cowboy, and we will dive deeper into the strange universe of gaming trends that we hate more than companions in Skyrim getting stuck in doorways. And because we like to complain in a neatly organized, comfortable house, I made it a top 10 list. So, you're with Kinnombra, make your tea, ask Lydia to move from the doorway, and let's go. And let's start with the area I've already mentioned. Number 10. Slow companions. Because they definitely cannot be number 1. They deserve to be at the end. I don't even know if it's a trend, a necessity, or just some ancient curse that prevents developers from matching an NPC speed to yours. But I still see it in so many games, and sometimes it gets completely absurd. I remember playing Medieval Dynasty around the time of its release, and the running speed of the person following me was so tragic that I started treating the game as my little patience whore. No joke, it was the slowest NPC I had ever encountered. Maybe this NPC issue is one of those things developers simply cannot fix. Like one of those game mysteries where if you delete one random picture of potato from the files, the entire game collapses. Entirely. And I remember how much joy it gave me in Divinity 2 when your companion suddenly rushed to you because you moved too far away. And I thought, gods, how beautiful, how incredible, how little I need to be happy. And you thought women were hard to impress. But there is one thing you cannot impress me with anymore. Our number 9, the amount of icons on your map. Especially when you are someone like me who explores every dungeon, checks every corner of the map, and still tries to find all those cursed stones of Berenzia from Skyrim. At some point you have to start customizing the map, if you can, of course. Or you just drop the game when you open it after a long pause and immediately get a huge sensory overload. Because of that, I actually remember enjoying the early versions of The Lone Dark, where, at that time, the map didn't show where exactly you were, or which direction you were facing. And I thought that was a very cool and realistic mechanic for a survival game where electronics and other devices were basically useless. Because it forced you to look more carefully at the compass, to pay attention to the landscape, and to compare the map with the things you could actually see around you. But then, in later versions, they fixed it. or maybe fixed it. And suddenly you had more icons and more guidance, and of course, I'm sure it helped a lot of people. But it was so cool to figure out the map by yourself. And yeah, I know old games like The Elder Scrolls 2 were sometimes guilty of the opposite problem. They would drop you on a huge map with schedules, quests, and the ability to soft lock yourself in almost every mission, simply because you got lost in one of the biggest maps in a game in history, where most things had no normal markers. Because if you suffer, that is a part of experience. So, we all crave balance. In a game where the exploration actually matters, sometimes it's so much cooler when we don't have to pin every single icon to every single object, as if developers were afraid we might think for ourselves. Because sometimes even the map should feel like orientation, not like looking at the desktop of a person who has never deleted a file in their life. Of course, having too many icons on the map would not be such a problem with our number 8, when your huge, massive open world has absolutely nothing in it. And again, I don't want to say that I dislike open worlds. I like freedom, exploration, and all the little Easter eggs mocking me for wasting my time flying around Los Santos on the jetpack. But the world has to be filled. And that is why open worlds work so well in games like Red Dead Redemption, GTA, or Skyrim. Because if you turn onto some random little path, there is a good chance that you will start a small side story, meet someone strange, find something weird, or at least make your journey feel a little different while fishing in every single game. But in some games, it feels as empty as some live service game service. Like when I was playing The Sinking City, again, a few years ago, and at some point I just got tired of dealing with that world. Not the Cthulhu in it. No, this enchanting mystery is always welcome in my house. But with swimming around pretty similar locations, where I could only lose my already precious bullets to the same monsters in a very uncomfortable shooting system, no. And the game itself is interesting, but the world feels kind of empty. And many developers fall into the same trap, as if they really want to say, our map is 12 times bigger than GTA 5. I think we all saw those videos comparing all the maps as if size was the only redeeming quality. And maybe some people really do enjoy driving for an hour in one direction after they already spent an hour driving home from work. But personally, I would like to spend my life on something better. Collecting feathers in Assassin's Creed 2. Well, no. So I started noticing how much pleasure more isolated games can bring, even very linear ones. When the map is well made, when the location is small, when maybe you don't have that many turns, but everything is dense, detailed, atmospheric, and visually strong enough that you don't feel like you got less. Sometimes one good corridor has more personality than an entire empty continent. Because I would rather spend 20 minutes inside a carefully built location than walk 20 minutes in one direction across a giant map only to hit an invisible wall and get vaporized by some random laser for my curiosity. I will forever adore the packed and diverse map of Dishonored 2, where exploration was on an art level. But with the number 7, exploration becomes a little nightmare. Because now we have collectibles. Nowadays, when a game promises you 50 hours of rich gameplay, you already understand that about 30 of those hours will probably be spent collecting feathers to get a completely useless cape. And the cape doesn't even say, all I got was this completely useless cape. Not even a punchline, just fabric. But modern games started doing this in a much sneakier way. Before, people complained about the feathers in Assassin's Creed 2 or the pigeons in GTA 4 because those things were obvious. You knew what was happening and decided to say your polite but firm no, so you could still love the game. You knew the game had placed tiny emotional crimes all over the map. But now, collectibles are more diverse, more disguised, more socially acceptable. Now we switch from 100 feathers that nobody dared to collect to like 700 little diverse pieces that you happily run after. Because of course you want to pet all cats in Evre in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Well, I envy people who are able to finish tasks with gold. And I also envy people who just do some missions without checking any collectibles. Because I'm stuck in this middle ground where I'm not very good at missions, but I really want to spend all my time collecting all the rubber bands in Buuut. And yeah, I also found all the feathers. I suffer the most in Ubisoft games because 80% of my tasks are basically collectibles wearing different hats. A couple of chests there, a tower here, some little balancing rock game, some things that are technically activities, but spiritually they're still feathers. Although, to be fair, collectibles can be fun when the game actually knows how to play with them. But Riddler trophies in Batman series, especially when the number started growing to 414 Arkham City, I would not do that just to receive some tiny extra ending for Riddler or an unfinished boss fight in Arkham Knight that feels like the game is mocking me. But number 6 is something I actually love. Well, when it is done properly. Crafting. Because again, I do love crafting systems, but I love them in games that are actually built around them. If you're playing Valheim, then of course everything is built around crafting, and I love collecting my beautiful piles of junk, putting them into perfect little chests, organizing them neatly inside the house I spent 150 hours building. There it makes sense. The same with Don't Starve or in games like that. The game is about survival, resources, building, preparation. So yeah, give me sticks, give me red gems, give me suspicious mushrooms. I'm emotionally ready. But sometimes you're playing Fallout and suddenly you already spent 5 hours picking up everything. Thinking, do I need more duct tape? Do I need these? What if I need this later? What if this random spoon is secretly the foundation of my future empire? And now you're over encumbered before you even started building your settlement, which of course also needs more nails, more glue, more metal, more everything. And now you cannot move because you are not a wasteland survivor anymore. You're a duct tape man. And maybe it's just me, but I would still like to feel like a hardened wasteland explorer, at least a little bit. Not a moving warehouse with 5 liters of glue in my pockets. Because in plenty of games, crafting starts feeling a little forced. Like the game added crafting not because it truly needed it, but because someone at a design meeting looked at it and said, "Wait, do we have enough duct tape? Every man has 100 rolls in his pockets." Well, maybe they do. I'm no man. I'm a feather collector. And yeah, pockets should not be endless. I understand that. But sometimes it feels nicer to be a person with reasonable pockets, not someone carrying 5 liters of glue for mysterious future reasons. Because at some point people may start asking questions. But at least crafting can make the game more diverse. It gives more things to do, more reasons to explore, more little pieces of junk to collect with suspicious enthusiasm. But number 5 is a little more problematic when you're impatient. Games wasting your time. And it is hard to summarize it as a one thing. Because for me, personally, one of the worst versions of this is unskippable tutorials or unskippable cutscenes. Because, I also like to replay games, and sometimes when I start the first Borderlands for 102nd time, oh my god, I don't want to hear that story again. Yes, the cinematic is cool. I like the art style. Because I want to shoot, loot, and not use my head. Because I probably already asked somebody to beat me in the head, like in the second game. But it is not the only way games can take your time. Sometimes it's a slow dialogue. Sometimes it's too many animations that you are forced to watch every time your character does something. Maybe you need to hold buttons for everything. Hold to open the door, hold to collect, hold to confirm that you confirmed. And then you have slow looting animations, forced walking sections, and maybe dialogues that you need to start over and over again because you are stuck in one section and your character needs to greet the same NPC again, and again. So we have many things. And the list is endless. Checklist instead of a gameplay, or maybe you need to clear all the items from the map and finish all the sections because there is an invisible grinding wall and you cannot move to the next level or next section without doing all of that first. Maybe you need to replay and backtrack through the same locations many times. So yeah, there are many ways to take your time. And sometimes it is not done with malicious intent. Maybe some animations exist so your computer can load everything without a boring loading screen. Yeah, they can be useful, but you still notice those things, especially if it's something you really dislike, like it happens for me with those unskippable cutscenes. And now, with me wasting your time with the list, let's move to number 4, where you can press F to pay respects. Yeah, now we're talking about QTEs. The absolutely insane amount of QTEs in games has thankfully gone down over the years. Well, at least a little bit. But sometimes they appear in the strangest possible moments. You're already enjoying a beautiful cinematic, maybe you're holding an Oreo, trying to twist it, lick it, and then suddenly you need to press E not to die. Well, you fail. And you also dropped your Oreo, so shame on you. But I understand QTEs in games that are built around them. In story-heavy games, like the ones Supermassive makes, it is a part of the language. You know what you came for, you know the game is going to ask you to press one button to destroy a house in the mountains, or to press another one just to open the fridge. But at least you expect this. You're trying to save a bunch of teenagers in some space camp or remote mountain house location. But when QTEs appear in games that really don't need them, especially in emotional scenes, they can feel absurd. And I'm glad that this trend is not as wild as it used to be. But every time it comes back, even for a second, I remember, and I don't miss it. And now we're crawling closer to our number 3, stealth. More specifically, forced stealth sections. Because isn't it beautiful when you spend almost the entire game as a powerful superhero, basically a human spider with constant financial problems, and then suddenly you're Mary Jane? And look, I'm not saying anything. I'm a woman, I'm ginger, and I definitely cannot climb on the ceiling that well. But still, there is something a little depressing about games suddenly taking you away from the character who can do everything, and putting you in the body of someone who can do almost nothing except crouch, hide, and dump pita in every movie or game. Many games have sections where they take away your weapons, your power, your comfort, and force you to somehow survive. And this can work. There are good examples, like in Silent Hill 2, where you have to give up your weapons. The section is tense, there are monsters, There is a clear path. You are vulnerable, but this scene actually understands why it is making you vulnerable. But it feels different when the game suddenly says, actually, for the next 20 minutes, you're not playing the game you bought. You're just slow and weak. Like when you're crawling through the opening of Metal Gear Solid 5, or when Joel is injured in The Last of Us and slowly move forward, unable to do almost anything. And I understand what the game is trying to do. It wants tension, it wants vulnerability, it wants emotional weight. But my god, it is slow. And at that point, I think even an NPC from Medieval Dynasty finally outran me. And the problem is not always that these sections are bad for the first time. Sometimes they work once. The first time, you understand the drama. You understand that the character is having a terrible day. But if you replay the game, because the other 95% is amazing, this is the part where your soul quietly leaves your body. And this is when you understand why the internet is full of save files that exist only to help people to skip one specific section. Not the final boss, not the hardest fight. Just you being slow and being weak. Like in real life. And in the second place, we're dealing with the oversimplified dialogue wheel. Not dialogue choices in general. I actually like variability in dialogues, when it's not only positive, rude, and that mystical sarcasm option, which is not even always funny or good. Sometimes even the character who appreciates sarcasm is cringing alongside me a little bit. What I hate is not seeing the actual sentence that I can use, because just nice or angry is not an answer. Let me be confused. Let me think that I'm choosing a nice answer only to realize that my personal idea of being nice is actually very bad. And maybe I should go to a psychotherapist, which is definitely doesn't exist in post-apocalyptic wasteland. And in the earlier Fallout games, same as in more fresh Disco Elysium, your answer actually depended on who you were or your stats. So you could not really answer outside of your character or be smooth while having charisma and intelligence on 0, which was amazing. Even if sometimes you felt a little uncomfortable because you decided to play it a complete disaster of stats. But that's what we wanted. I don't want the game to oversimplify me. Give me a little challenge. Like in real life, you cannot always press the positive button and be perceived positively. No, sometimes you choose something very random and then the whole city starts chasing you because maybe you implied that you were going to kill their favorite chicken. And I kind of like that the dangerous thing in the game is not only ghouls, but also my own sense of what a nice answer is. In many games you have a certain set of answers you can choose from, and it is good if they depend on your class or your own characteristics, but mostly it is just a certain set where you can predict too easily how a person will react, so you can play safe. Maybe I can say that earlier Obsidian Entertainment and BioWare games were often better at this, and the outcomes were much better because they were not as categorized and predictable, and didn't just depend on whether you had charisma on 10. Yet sometimes the game still treated some of the answers as bad, even though you could have been talking to a character who might consider the answer funny or even good for them. I remember having this problem with a very nice BioWare game and a very underappreciated one, well, at least in my country, Jade Empire. And there was a sarcastic character who was flirting with you in a very sarcastic way. And when I answered with, surprise, sarcastic options, which seemed flirtatious to me, maybe because I was 10, I thought, yeah, this is flirting. This is how flirting works. You exchange your little verbal knives until romance happens. but he apparently didn't think it was flirting. And it didn't feel real to me, because sarcasm is flirting when you do it together. And that is a basic cursed chemistry. But, okay. And I like when some games, sometimes even indie games, implement this better, so dialogues feel more realistic. Because if I ruin a conversation, I want to know that I ruined everything myself, not because the nice button lied to me. And finally, we have reached our number one, the yellow paint era. Because do you really like it when a game treats you like a small child who cannot find a ladder in the room? We're talking about games showing us everything on a silver plate, not even asking us to spend 1 second looking around and using your brain. I mean, I understand that games don't have to be like they were in 90s, or like those old quests where you could drop one random item and soft lock the whole game forever. I get it. We probably don't need to go back to the time when the solution to a puzzle was finding another light bulb inside a can. It's not always that complicated. And if I bought a game known for puzzles or exploration or mysteries, then maybe I actually want to spend some time figuring things out, without something bright yellow screaming at me, "Here, come here, good player, follow the paint." This is definitely not what I want. And the same thing happens with companions who start hinting what you need to use after a few seconds inside a room. Maybe I was thinking, maybe I was looking at the graphics, maybe I was dissociating for a second. That is also okay, but why do I need all the hints that early? At this point, I don't actually feel guided, I feel supervised. And okay, even if I'm super stuck, I would prefer that supervision to be like a cranky manager who's taunting and pushing me to use my brain a little more. Not the sugary sweet manager who's already writing in the game log, "Okay, they are getting worse. We need brighter paint, more arrows, more hints on the screen. They're not making it." And, of course, there are many other trends that I cannot exactly call my personal favorites, or favorites of the gaming community. And I'm sure I missed a few crimes. So if you want to point out your personal nemesis in the gaming history, please let me know. What trend makes you look at a game and think, "Oh no, this abomination deserves to be number one in another top 10 made by a weird Slavic woman on the internet"? Because maybe one day I'll make a new video about other trends we desperately wish we could erase from existence. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe. You've been with Kinnombra, and I hope your day goes on without Lydia getting constantly stuck in the doorway.